Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today I'm excited to talk about my Dragapult Charizard deck that I have won 3 straight tournaments in a row with. No, I'm not making that up. I have literally gone undefeated with this deck at 3 tournaments. I won a league challenge. The next Friday, I won my local tournament with it, and then I just recently, last night, won a League Cup with this deck. And a lot of people want to ask me to talk about the deck, make a video on it, kind of explain it. So this video is going to be a bit more of like, honestly, more of a masterclass expose of how the deck plays, my inclusions, why I play the deck, different lines, different plays you can make with the deck. Because I played a lot of the deck, and like I said, I have won 3 tournaments in a row with it. And it's got me 65 CP so far. Again, I won a cup and a challenge with it. It's a pretty insane deck. I actually won my first League Cup, which I'm very happy about. Never won a League Cup before. The closest I came was top 4 with Mew VMAX. But I'm definitely excited to talk about my run with the deck and give more of an in-depth look. I actually have done a YouTube video on the deck over here on the main channel. Not the same list I've been playing, but a similar concept. So, like, if you want to see gameplay with the deck, you can check out my main channel video. This video is going to be more of a deck explanation, a deck profile, why I play the deck, different inclusions, lines you can take, plays, matchups, all that stuff is going to be talked about within this video. Because I think this deck is honestly really, really good. It is a harder deck to pilot, I will admit. It's not easy to play. You can't just pick it up and just do well with it. It is like a lot of skill, in my opinion. There's a lot of plays you can make, a lot of different lines. I mean, at the end of the day, you are playing a Pidgeot deck. And if you're new to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We are on the road to 16K subs, and if you want to enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and all that good stuff. So yeah, hope you enjoy my mini masterclass talk about the Dragapult deck that I've been doing really good with so far. So here's the first list I played to the League Challenge and my local tournament. This build here is very, very solid. This is the first build of the deck. 2 different builds of the deck, actually. And actually, they play very differently. You got this build, which plays a 1-1 Charizard. This is the one that I won the challenge with and the local tournament with. And then there's the build that I used to win the League Cup, which plays a 2-2 Charizard. So not really much changed about the list. I literally just cut a Dragapult and a Dreepy, threw in an extra Charmander and Zard. And I'll talk about why I did that going into this League Cup and why I played the 2-2 Zard over the 1-1 Zard. But I think both versions of the deck are very good. Now, I do want to give credit to Michael Premowat. He's the one who inspired me to try this deck out. Michael Premowat did get top 64 at NEIC with the deck. His build was different than the other version that is also popular, and that is, of course, Tord's build. Tord's build of the deck here is actually a lot different than the one I've been playing. His is more of a Charizard deck than a Dragapult deck. My version is a Dragapult deck with Charizard in it. That's the way I look at it. But Tord did take a different approach here. His build was a lot different. He didn't play the Neo Upper Energy. He played cards like TM Evo. He played more Fire Energy. He played a 1 of Dragapult as opposed to 2 to 3. He played more Charizard. His build was a lot different than the one I've been playing. But you know, they're similar-ish decks. I mean, they kind of do the same thing in a way, though, again, Tord did kind of lean more into the idea of using Charizard, I guess, as your main attacker over the Dragapult. But yeah, this one is, again, more of a Dragapult-focused deck. It is similar to the Dragapult Pidgeot decks that have actually been seeing a lot of play. I think Dragapult Pidgeot did win NEIC in the Seniors Division, so the deck clearly has a lot of legs right now in the format. And like I said, I have been playing a lot of it to these tournaments, and yeah, my matchups have been pretty solid. I think for the most part, beaten everything in the format that I've been, up against. Like, I've beaten Control, I've beaten Stall, Gardevoir, Raging Bolt, Drago, Chien-Pao, Lugia, what else? Like, Dragapult Charizard Mirror Match has been decent. Yeah, it's been pretty good. I've beaten Lost Box, too. That's another one I played against. And yeah, then the deck's really strong. So the focus of the deck is Dragapult is your main attacker, right? It's the main card in the deck that you want to attack with. We are playing that Neo Upper Energy Ace-Spec, which is genuinely the best card in the deck, in my opinion. It is so, so good. Yes, having Unfair Stamp is nice. Unfair Stamp is a very, very good card. Even Prime Catcher is really good. But Neo Upper makes this deck way more stronger than you think. The idea of Neo Upper Energy is that you can attach it to your Dragapult and attack with it for just a single energy. A lot of lists right now are actually cutting Temple Sinnoh or Enhanced Hammer, which is really good for your Neo Upper Energy to stick. You can even use it with Charizard. If you don't have any Fire Energy in the deck to accelerate, you can just attach it to Charizard. I have won like 3 or 4 games so far just by doing that alone. Like, just having a Charizard on the bench with no energy on it, and out of nowhere, I attach a Neo Upper and just take a knockout. It is really, really good in the deck. It is such a good card. Yeah, it honestly is what makes the deck work, in my opinion. Since this deck is more of a Dragapult Pidgeot deck, you're not all the time going, Charizard Dragapult. You're not going Charizard, put energy on Dragapult, and then attach to charge it up. You are relying a lot on that Neo upper energy to carry you, but it really does carry you. It's such a good card. Basically, if you miss energy attachment turn one on a Dreepy or something, or in the late game you're running low on energy, you always have the Neo upper energy to be at your disposal. It's such a good card, and like I said, it is arguably the one card that MVPs this deck, putting on early Dragapult pressure, putting on late game Charizard pressure with the Neo Upper. It is such a versatile and strong card, especially when decks are not respecting the Neo Upper as they should be. So yeah, this is the original build I played. The idea of the 1/1 Zard is that it's good in the late game. You have the Dragapult in the early game. The Zard's also really good against Gardevoir, which was another big reason why I played it. Because against Gardevoir, a lot of the time, Dragapult can lose to Guardy. They can put Gardevoir in the active and then hit you and then Turo it, and it becomes really tough to deal with. When you have a Charizard in play, though, Gardevoir has to play very differently because there's always that looming threat of Charizard, which can always one-shot the Gardevoir EX, which is why the Charizard is really good in the deck. It's also good in a lot of other scenarios. It fixes a lot of your matchups because, Dragapult isn't the greatest attacker a lot of the time, whereas Charizard is always going to be a very strong attacker to have in the deck because it's really good in the late game. Some plays you can make in the early game, you can set up damage with Dragapult's Phantom Dive attack, put damage on other Pokemon so that in the late game you can finish them off with Charizard's Burning Darkness attack or with a Phantom Dive or Radiant Charizard. Charizard also, like I said, gives you that type coverage into Gardevoir, which is really good. It can be really good against Lost Box too, where you can one-shot those big threats like Ursaluna, Iron Hands, stuff that Dragapult can't really knock out as easily on its own. The idea, though, with Dragapult is why I prefer using it in the early game is it's putting 260 damage on the board every single turn. The issue with Charizard early game, Charizard's only doing 180 damage. Your opponent can play around it. There's ways you can manipulate Charizard's damage output, whereas Dragapult is just constantly putting 260 damage on the board every single turn, which is so good. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer the Dragapult over the heavy Charizard line. It's because Dragapult is just a better early game attacker, especially when you're playing against a mirror match or a Charizard deck, because you can pick off the Bidoofs, the Pidgeys, the Charmanders, you can put damage on lower HP basics to be finished off. Really good into Lost Box too, where you can set damage up on all the Comfies to then sweep them later on in the game. There's so many different things you can do with Dragapult, which is why I prefer the Dragapult line over the heavier Charizard line. But then, of course, we have the secondary build here that I played at the League Cup, which played a 2/2 Charizard. So I did have a heavier line of Charizard for the League Cup. And the main logic behind that was I expected more Raging Bolt at this League Cup that I went to. And I was like, there might be more Raging Bolt. So having the double Charizard is going to be nice to have against Raging Bolt. Also, it's better into stuff like Drago. It's better into Lugia even, just because it's such a big hitter. It does so much damage. It can one-shot stuff in the late game very easily. Sometimes your opponent can't deal with it quick enough, and it can just win you the game on the spot. And that's why I like the Charizard. Again, it just fixes more math and more issues Dragapult faces. Dragapult is really good in the early game if you can attack with it. In the late game, it starts to drop off in power level because you just don't have that big attacker, whereas you have Charizard, which is a big attacker. You do play the Radiant Zard, which you can technically use as a big attacker, but the issue with Radiant Zard is you have to switch it out and stuff. It's still a really good card in the deck. I'm still playing it no matter what, but I like having the addition of the Charizard in the deck too, as that big puncher in the deck. It's also good in the early game. I mean, sometimes you can't set up Dragapult. Well, you always have Charizard. I mean, Charizard's still not bad in the early game. It's not as good as Dragapult, but it's still not bad. It's still Charizard at the end of the day. It still is just an insane card that can power itself up and attack your opponent. Of course, the Pidgeot and the Bibarel is really good. One thing I adore about this deck is the amount of draw it has. It is crazy. You have Pidgeot EX. You have a 1/1 Bibarel. And you have Dracloak in the deck. If you can set up a board of Pidgeot, Dracloak, Bibarel, you're basically always doing whatever you want every single turn because of all the draw options you have. It's really good to have Dracloak, Bibarel, and Pidgeot in the deck all at once. It makes the deck so much stronger, very consistent. It gives you more lines in a matchup, and it makes it harder for your opponent to counterplay you because it's well, damn, you just have all this draw in play. How do I keep up with that? It makes you less vulnerable to Stamp and Iono, which is really good too. Now, I really like having the Rotom in the deck and the Lumineon. I think Towards Build just played Lumineon, if I remember correctly here. We can pull that up. Yeah, Towards Build just played the Lumineon, no Rotom. The reason I play the Rotom in the deck is because if you're going first, which, if you're playing against a deck and they make you go first knowing you're playing a Buddy, Poff, and Arven deck, they're going to make you go first, right? So being able to just get a Rotom down turn 1 with a Dreepy, a lot of the time can get you into a turn 2 Zard or Dragapult, which is why I think Rotom is still very necessary in the deck. Just being able to instant charge to build up your hand is good. It also lets you set up the crazy Pidgeot Dragapult turn 2, which I quite often can find. It's not that complicated with Forest Seal Stone and, Ultra Ball, Candy. It's not that hard to get Dragapult Pidgeot up turn 2 with the Neo Upper Energy if you don't prize it. The Lumineon's still really good because Lumineon can turn into a rare candy stage 2 thanks to Arven Forest Seal Stone. Cleffa's really good. Cleffa's insane, actually. Cleffa's good because you can sit behind it for a couple turns. I've won many games where my board state is very weak. Even though I can, attack, I don't want to attack because I don't want to risk my board getting crippled. So I sometimes just sit there and go Cleffa instead, and then I try to power up my board. And at the end of the day, you are playing a setup-focused deck. This deck does have a lot of things you need to set up. You need to get the Dragapult out. You need Charizard, Pidgeot, Bibarel, Dracloaks. You want to set up a pretty good board. And once you do get that good board set up with all that draw option, the deck can become pretty unstoppable. And that's why I like having the Cleffa. It's a really good Pokemon to sit behind and build your board up. It only gives up 1 prize card as opposed to 2. It's a perfect card. It's got a free retreat cost. It's never a bad Pokemon to open with. The only matchup where I don't really like having it down is against Gardevoir because they can Monkey Dory, knock it out, and take a free prize. But every other matchup, usually it's good to have it in play. I guess Lost Box is another bad one, but you get my point. Like, it's just a really good card to have on your board to draw cards. You can sit behind it for a turn or two to load up your board and set up a better board state than your opponent, which is really, really good. Now, supporter count is like really the only thing that might be a little weird. 3 Arven, 2 Iono. The reason why I'm playing 3 Arven and 2 Iono, and honestly, the more I thought about it, I'm like, I maybe want to play 4 Arven, maybe I want to play 3 Iono to make the deck more consistent. It's just trying to fit everything in the deck itself becomes a little convoluted, and I just can't find space for the Arven. Honestly, it's not bad. 3 Arven's fine. I've never really had any issues with only 3 Arven. There's some games where I instant charge and I don't find an Arven off the instant charge, and that's like kind of annoying, but I think 3 Arven's fine. I get away with it a lot of the time. Iono's not bad as a 2-of. You're not playing Unfair Stamp, so you don't have as much hand disruption, but you do have Palpad, and the next supporter I want to talk about, you have Silene in the deck. So, Silene, it's so good, dude. It wins me so many games. And why it wins you games? Because you have infinite resources. You can get back anything you want with Silene, right? You flip 2 coins, you can put something on top of your deck. So the idea with Silene is it's good against Neo. It's good with Neo Upper. If you do get that Neo Upper off really quickly, if your opponent does play Enhanced Hammer, you can just go Silene. You can quick search for Silene, or if it's already in your hand, you can Silene, get the Neo Upper back on top of your deck. You use Bibarel or Dracloak to then get the Silene, to get the Neo Upper back, and you attach Neo Upper again, and then their Enhanced Hammer is wasted. I found a lot of the time, if you put on enough early game pressure with Neo Upper Energy Dragapult, if your opponent does go for that Enhanced Hammer line, if it's not already in their hand, usually they have to go out of the way to find it, meaning that they're not doing as much setup. So, like, if you're playing against Charizard with an Enhanced Hammer, for example, you get turn 2 Dragapult with Neo Upper Energy on. If they, like, Arven for Enhanced Hammer, but they don't go Buddy Poffin, most of the time their board is not getting as well set up because they had to go out of the way to find Hammer, so you can punish that by just going Silene. Yeah, Silene can flip 2 tails, obviously that's grief, but it'll flip heads most of the time, but if, flips double tails, okay, whoop-de-doo. But it's also really good against Control and Stall. So this deck doesn't really have a bad Stall Control matchup because of Silene, Kieran, and Turo. So the Turo's really nice because, it's Turo, right? You can heal stuff. You can pick up your Charizard, Dragapult. You can pick up your Fish or Rotom. And you can also Turo your Pokemon that get trapped in the active by Snorlax or Ogerpon. And you have Kieran, which does the same thing. It lets you switch. Kieran is a very multi-purpose card. I was not really high on the deck at first. I thought Double Turo was just better. The more I played around with Kieran, though, the more I realized Kieran is better than Double Turo because, yeah, it doesn't pick something off the board up, but it does have those 2 uses. You can either do that extra 30 damage that can come up in the late game with Charizard. It lets you win the game even easier. You can use it with Dragapult to do 230, but it also lets you switch. So one of the plays that actually comes up a lot is Monkey Dory. So if your opponent goes Monkey Dory against you and tries to confuse you, you can just quick search for Kieran and then go into the Pokemon and attack again, knock out the Monkey Dory. So the Kieran's better because the switch effect is genuinely stronger than the Double Turo, in my opinion. I find it a lot better. And with the Palpad, Silene, Turo, Kieran combo, it's good. A lot of the time against Control and Stall, what I'll do is I will go Turo first, and then maybe I'll play the Kieran, and then I will play the Silene, try to get one of those 2 pieces back, and then I will Palpad the Silene back into the deck. And then you can kind of loop those resources. Because then you can, like, Silene for Palpad, put Palpad on top of your deck, Dracloak into it, play the Palpad, get Silene back, kind of loop that over and over again. You can protect your Silene with Dracloak and shuffling effects. You don't want to leave it on top of your deck in case of a Shiyu or a Misfortune Sisters. You can always manipulate with Dracloak. You can like Dracloak the Palpad to the bottom of the deck to keep it protected, or something like that. Ideally, against Control Install, you have 2 switching cards to get around Snorlax. Because really what you can do is you just sit there with Neo Upper Energy Dragapult and just keep beating them down every single turn. And you can knock out Rotom in one hit with Dragapult. You can set up damage on the bench. It's really, really good. If they go Mimikyu, you can just attack with Dracloak. If you're playing against Pidgeot Control, same thing applies. The switching cards are good. But you can also use Radiant Charizard. I found that actually against Pidgeot Control, if they're playing the Luxray Reversal Energy package, if they're taking prizes on you, eventually Radiant Charizard becomes an attacker, right? Especially if they're trying to go Mimikyu against you. So Miss Energy Mimikyu is a little annoying because you can also boss stuff up on the bench and then put 6 on the Mimikyu and then KO it later on down the road because you can Dragapult secondary effect onto a benched Mimikyu as long as there's no Mist Energy on it. So that's one of the lines I do go for in that matchup. But when you have infinite resources with Silene, it's really, really good. You can get back anything. Like, you can use it to get Candy back if you're playing against a deck with Devo or Eerie. You can get back an energy. Like, even just getting back, like, a Fire or Psychic is really good. I actually won a game because I needed specifically a Psychic energy in order to attack with Dragapult. So I went Silene, Psychic on top, and then quick search for it, and then it allowed me to win that match effectively. So Silene's just really good. You can get back Rod, Palpad, Turo, anything you want, bro. It's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, Silene is cracked, and I love it a lot. I think the supporter account is quite literally perfect. I don't think you need Mela. You have Charizard EX, you have Neo Upper Energy, you have Silene. Mela's not really necessary. I think the supporter account is perfect. If you can find room, maybe try to fit a 4th Arven or 3rd Iono into the deck, I guess. But I've been having success with the supporter account. It's really good into stall and control. If they have Sandshrew, it's a little bit more annoying, but if they're playing Sandshrew, hold on to a boss's order. They bench Sandshrew, you boss knock out Sandshrew, and then you can use Silene and Palpad again. So that's one thing you want to keep your eye out for if you're playing against a deck with Sandshrew. So against stuff like Gardevoir, again, Gardevoir, you can beat early. Dragapult pressure is really good. You want to have a Charmander on the bench. Like against Gardevoir, a lot of the time you're bored. You want to have Dragapult, Charizard/Charmander on your bench, Pidgeot, Bibarel, a Dracloak in play, and then arguably you want to have a Manaphy on your board if you can. You want to try to get Manaphy down into the mid to late game because then you know they're going to Screamtail you. They're going to try to Screamtail stamp your Bibarel, Screamtail kill your Pidgeot. So you want to make sure you get Manaphy down at a good time to stop them from doing Screamtail shenanigans. That's the idea. Another thing against Gardevoir, if they're ever caught off guard and you have the ability to knock out Gardevoir or Charizard, you just always take it. You win the game a lot of the time if you just take 2 prizes on a Gardevoir out of nowhere. And against Gardevoir, what I like to do is if I get turned to Dragapult, and they don't have a Gardevoir out, and they have 2 Kirlias on board, I like to go like 40-20 on 2 different Kirlias, because you put 6 on a Kirlia, they're just going to evolve into Gardevoir, and there's no point. So you want to spread the damage around on the 2 Kirlias. You can go like 3-3 on 2 Kirlias. You can go 4-2. That's the way I like to go against them. And if they do, once they get Gardevoir out, I like just piling 6 damage counters onto the Kirlias every time you go Dragapult. So every time you get to attack with Dragapult against Gardevoir, I like to just keep putting 6 damage counters on the Kirlias, because eventually the Kirlias are going to get knocked out. They can Monkey Dory them. If they don't get double Monkey Dory down, again, you can just keep putting 6 on them. If you really have to, you can knock out Monkey Dory with Counter Catcher Boss with Dragapult. Again, just keep putting 6 damage counters on the Kirlias. I think that's the best way to approach that matchup with your Dragapult attack. It really depends on the scenario. Like, sometimes you can use Dragapult to knock out Screamtail or Drifloon by, putting them on the bench and then killing them with that effect. So there are different lines you can take, but most of the time I like just going after their Kirlias, because once you shut off your Gardevoir's draw engine, eventually they're going to brick and they're not going to find stuff, especially with an Iono. So when you have Pidgeot, Bibarel, Dracloak out, you're drawing more cards than they're drawing cards because you've just been constantly picking off the Kirlias. You can try to look for lines where you can go boss, knockout, double Kirlia in a single turn with Dragapult. So there's different lines you want to take against the Guardy matchup. Again, keep your eye out for options with Charizard EX to boss KO Gardevoir. If they ever attack a Gardevoir EX for whatever reason and you have a Charmander play and you can go Charizard, you just knock them out. Easy peasy. Pretty good stuff. Your Guardy matchup isn't bad. And again, if they try to Monkey Dory you, you have the Kieran in the deck. Kieran's really good with Bibarel. They sometimes want to go Flutter Mane, Counter Catcher, Trap Bibarel. You can just go quick search for Kieran and then move Bibarel. You can also Turo your Bibarel, which sometimes is better because then your Bibarel can't get killed by like a Monkey Dory because of the 90 damage you took. But, the Kieran's good. Kieran's really good into Guardy. It helps against Flutter Mane and Monkey Dory, which is really, really good. Talking about other matchups, I guess. Your Raging Bolt matchup is interesting. There are different ways you can approach the matchup. It is really good to have double Zard against Raging Bolt. The other build I played isn't as good into Raging Bolt because you only have a 1/1 Charizard. So if you prize a Charizard piece, you're probably going to lose. You do have Radiant Charizard, and Dragapult isn't terrible in a Raging Bolt because you can still put damage on the bench Ogerpons. You can still take 4 prize turns out of nowhere with the deck. Like, you can hit Raging Bolt for 200 damage, sprinkle damage on the Ogerpons on the bench, and then you can have a turn you go like Iono, Counter Catcher, Dragapult again, and then you can knock knock out multiple Pokemon at once, taking 4 prizes. Charizard EX obviously is insane in the matchup. Late game Charizard Iono is really, really good. If they can't one-shot you, you can just blow them up. Charizard is risky, though, because they can still KO you with their Teal Mask Ogerpon. If they're playing the Cornerstone Ogerpon, you have the Dragapult. If they go into that, you just hit them with the Dragapult instead. Or if they're going Cornerstone Ogerpon against you, you can still boss up stuff from the bench, I guess. It's not that bad. If they play Squawkabilly down, there's an easy 2-prize liability. Pretty good stuff, I want to say. I wouldn't mind maybe trying to fit a Jamming Tower in here. It would help into Raging Bull. You can shut off Bravery Charm. It's good into Guardy, obviously. Good into Mirror Match if they're playing Devo. Like, if you're playing against a random Dragapult deck or a random Zard deck that plays a random TM Devo, it's also really good to have the Jamming Tower. That's, like, one card I'm considering playing as a Jamming Tower. I maybe could even see Vacuum getting cut for Jamming Tower. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it is possible to cut Jamming Tower, cut Vacuum for Jamming Tower. Jamming Tower definitely is something I do want to play in here because we're only playing the Forest Seal and the Defiance Band, right? The Forest Seal is only good in like the early game most of the time to set you up. But yeah, Jamming Tower is another card I kind of want to play. But Vacuum's fine. You can get Vacuum back with Silene also. And then Jamming Tower, same thing. But your Jamming Tower can get vacuumed and then you can't Silene it back. So that's kind of the main issue you can face with that problem. Again, your Charizard Dragapult matchup, like if you're playing against Charizard itself, just you go Dragapult as much as you can in that matchup, cripple their board. If they set up Pidgeot in that matchup, you can put 6 on Pidgeot with Dragapult, and then you can put another 2 damage counters on it, and then later on in the game, you can go Counter Catcher, KO Pidgeot with Dragapult, and then knock something else out on the bench. So you can put like 8 on a Pidgeot or something. If they play Mist Energy, that's a little bit more grief, but you can always knock out Pidgeot with Charizard or something if you really have to in the late game. But putting damage on Pidgeot early on is usually pretty good. Even just putting like 1 damage counter on it means in the late game you can just go Counter Catcher, knock out Burning Darkness or something like that. So you can do a lot of damage manipulation on their Pidgeot also. You can knock out their Bidoof before they evolve. Essentially, if you get early Dragapult off against Charizard, you can really cripple their board. A lot of the time you just beat Charizard if you early Dragapult them, which is kind of the idea of the deck. And then in the mirror, you have your own late game Charizard. So you can checkmate your opponent sometimes if you play smart and you don't walk into like obvious knockouts, especially if you know they play Kieran and you know the Defiance Man is still in the deck. If you know they play TM Devo, don't walk into like obvious KO scenarios. And sometimes you have your own Charizard to KO their Charizard in one hit, which checkmates them. Pretty good against like Turo spam and stuff sometimes too, which is really nice. The Dragapult matchup, I mean, realistically, it's like the mirror match of Dragapult Charizard. Is whoever gets Dragapult off first usually is winning that game or has a slight advantage. That's kind of how the matchup goes. You just try to get Dragapult early. Regidrago's not the greatest matchup either because they can obviously Dragapult you. Drago is not a consistent deck, though, sometimes. And that matchup, usually, if you get to set up a Pidgeot in that matchup, you're fine. Actually, if you're playing against Regidrago, I think you want to go first, so you can at least try to get a Charizard or a Pidgeot in play as quick as possible. Because if they turn to Dragapult you, you're probably going to lose that game, to be honest. So it is really good to be able to stabilize against them. So if you're playing against Regidrago, I like going first in that matchup just so you can try to get the early Stage 2 out before they set up like a complete board wipe on you or something like that, which is really, really good. Your Lugia matchup is also a little shaky because Mist Energy and Cinccino are problems. I mean, Lugia, you probably want to go first and you want to try to get as much attack pressure off as you can. If you can set up against them, it's not too bad. If the Lugia player goes double Archeops before they power up a Cinccino, for whatever reason, you just counter catch your boss KO and Archeops, and you probably win the matchup from there, which is fine. Against Lugia, you got to be mindful of your bench, though. You don't want to put too many 2-prize liabilities on your bench, because then they can, like, boss you and stuff, which is tough. Because if they're not one-shotting Charizard or Dragapult, you're actually not that bad in that matchup, right? So it is nice to have the ability to, like, protect your bench if you can in that matchup for sure. Your Chien-Pao matchup can be scary. Lines to look at in the Chien-Pao matchup, Dragapult's going to be your best friend. You can knock out Bidoof before they evolve. You can sometimes KO 6 HP Frigibaxes. You can put like damage on like Chien-Paos on the bench to be KO'd if they have like 2 in play for whatever reason. You can knock out double Bibarel in a single turn. You go like put 6 on Bibarel with Dragapult, and then you go like Iono Dragapult again, and then you can go like Iono Counter Catcher, KO double Bibarel, and then shut off their deck completely. There are different lines you can take with that. The Chien-Pao matchup is a little scary, though. I think you probably want to go first again, so you can try to set up a good board. You can go second, I guess, but if you go second, they can sometimes get turn 2 hands if they draw well enough. Chien-Pao is kind of one of those decks where, like, if they just kind of draw hot, you kind of just can't do anything about it. It is what it is. That's just kind of the way I like to approach the matchup, I guess. what other matchups are there to tech for? Lost Box. Yeah, the Lost Box. So Lost Box is like fine. Turbo is scary. If they get Greninja turn 2 and you just can't do anything about it, it's game over. Same thing with like Sableye really fast. But against Lost Box, Dragapult's really, really good. Charizard's insane. That's also why I like Double Zard. If you can set up a Zard and Dragapult against Lost Box, you're chilling. Charizard, you just evolve it, put energy on it, and it's set up for the rest of the game. Really good against those big 2-prize threats like Ursaluna and Iron Hands and even Iron Thorns if for whatever reason your opponent tries to use that against you. And then also, yeah, Charizard really good, just blow stuff up. You have Iono on the deck. Dragapult's really good because you can knock out Comfies. You can knock out multiple Comfies at once. One thing I like to do in the matchup, due to Switch Card being a problem, and also Roxanne, I actually like sprinkling damage across all their Comfies, like 2-2-2, and then eventually if you can kind of sweep them with Dragapult in that point of the game, if they're going around the Dragapult and not attacking it, knowing there's no way to one-shot Dragapult with like a Moon or something, you can like just keep sprinkling damage on Comfies, hit them with a good Iono, you can knock out a ton of Comfies at once, which is really good. So there are different plays you can make with the Lasso matchup. It's one of those matchups too, like Chien-Pao, where it's like, okay, if they just happen to Greninja Sableye you super quick and obliterate your board, it is what it is. You're probably going to take an L there. But, like, really, if you set up against them, it's not that bad. If you set up against Chien-Pao or Lost Box or Drago, usually you're probably just winning that matchup, right? In my opinion, anyways. I think it's fine. Again, your stall and control matchups, you have Silene and Kieran. Against stall and control, I like to have a Pidgeot, a Dracloak, and a Dragapult in play. You don't use Charizard against stall or control because it's not as good as Dragapult. Charizard is useless in that matchup. If you're playing against Pidgeot control, you try to go Charizard, they're just going to cornerstone Ogre upon you. So you never use Charizard against stall control. It's just the Dragapult Pidgeot show at that point. You have the Silene, the Turo, the Kieran in the deck. If you're playing against Snorlax with a Temple of Sinnoh, it's kind of annoying because then you can't use New York Energy, which is kind of grief. You have the Vacuum and the Collapse Stadium. Another reason I wouldn't mind playing the Jamming Tower, because against stall and control, you can shut off their charms and stuff, and you can also shut off Temple of Sinnoh, so you can play Neo Upper Energy. So that's another matchup where I do think Jamming Tower would be really good in the 60, so you can beat that matchup a little bit more easily. This is kind of how it goes. So I guess mini tournament report for the League Challenge that I went to. I can't remember the entire tournament. Exactly. I played against 2 Gardevoir. I beat a Gardevoir round 1, beat a Gardevoir round 3. I did play against the Snorlax in the finals, which I did beat. Played against Raging Bolt in round 5. I'm trying to remember what else I played against. It was 2 weeks ago. It's kind of hard to remember. Yeah, I can't remember exactly everything I played against. The other tournament I went to that I won, I played against a Regidrago. They did whiff turn 2 Drago, which was obviously important. Like I said, that's how you try to beat that matchup, is you got to hope they whiff that turn 2 Drago, and you want to go first if you can. I think they won the coin flip too, but again, they got unlucky. They didn't get turn 2 Drago off. I beat Lost Box in the finals. Very close game. They almost had game. I went late game Iono, KO a bunch of Comfies with Dragapult, and they basically, if they didn't win that turn, I just won the game flat out, right? But they did whiff the bundle hands combo off my Iono to 2, and because I knocked out their rescue board of Comfy, and they were down 3 switch cards, something like that, or they had like 1 switch card in the deck, and they just weren't able to find it because I Iona'd them so low, and I knew they had like Roxanne in their hand because they geared for it early on, and I played around the Roxanne by sprinkling 2/2/2 on all the Comfy so that I could go Iono, knock out all their Comfy at once, and Iono them, put their Roxanne to the bottom of their deck, which obviously did pull its weight, I guess, which is nice. Did play against I played against the Zard Dragapult mirror match. It was a very interesting match. I knew they were down their Defiance band. So I think what I did was I played around their Charizard one-shotting me, and I forget what I did exactly. I did an interesting play. I think I killed their active Charizard, left them with no way to win the game, and then I just had checkmate with Dragapult. And I played against another Dragapult Charizard mirror in that tournament too, round 1. I got early Dragapult off, and they just couldn't set up in time, and I just rolled them over Dragapult. Again, the Dragapult Charizard mirror match, usually it's whoever Dragapult's first is favored. Just kind of how it goes. League Cup, I did beat a Gardevoir. They priced 3 Curlias, but I got turned to Charizard, but my board state was kind of weak, so I had an opportunity. I played an Iono, and I didn't draw well with the Iono, so instead of taking a knockout on their active Ralts with my Charizard, I just went instant charge because I wanted to build my board up, because if I KO the Ralts, they can unfair stamp, and I had no Bibarel, no Pidgeot play, no Dracloak. I could lose the game at that point, even when they prize 3 Curlia. So I chose to play it safe, and I instant charged instead to try to build my board up a little bit more so that I could put myself in a better spot, and it paid off in the end because I won the match. I played against the Chien-Pao deck in top 4 of the League Cup. They were playing the Dunsparce build, but it was actually very bad. Game 1, they got turn 2 Prime Catcher Cologne on my Dreepy and Charmander, so I had no way to attack. I think I went like Cleffa Counter Catcher, their backs plus Iono them, and then they went backs KO Cleffa, and then at that point I set up a little bit, and then I was able to kill their Dunsparce. Their Drongit is kind of fragile when they don't have access to Bibarel, so I just kind of ran them over to Dragapult. And I think I set up a game-winning Dragapult for 4 prizes at the end of the game because they had no way to KO because they whiffed the attack. And they couldn't win the game because they just couldn't find enough pieces to one-shot my Dragapult. Game 2, they started Fish, which is unfortunate. I had the opportunity to KO their Fish to win the game because I can go Zard, Dragapult, Radiant Zard for game, but for some reason I didn't KO the Fish with a boss, which I should have done. I still was fine because I was still going to go, I think no matter what, I was going to go Zard, Dragapult, Radiant Zard for game regardless, but I did make a bit of a misplay by not bossing their Lumineon, but again, Iono just does wonders in that matchup. It was really, really good. And in the finals, I hit my friend Mario. Unfortunately, he did brick because he whiffed a basic, which was crazy. He went second, whiffed a basic. I had turned to Charizard, so unfortunately he just whiffed a basic. I think it just is what it is. He just whiffed a basic, couldn't get a basic. He played a Pokeball flipped tails, couldn't find a basic, and just went attached Lumineon pass, and then I had turn 2 Zard, because he made me go first, knowing that I'm more of a setup deck. It's kind of how it is. I played against an Ancient Roaring Moon box deck in the top 8 match. It was actually kind of close because game 1 he won because I had a slow start, and I had to bench too many 2-prize liabilities, which he ended up bossing around. In game 2, I did win because Dragapult and Charizard are so beefy in that matchup. And then in game 3, I also won. We went to time in game 3. I had the prize lead no matter what, so I ended up winning that game. Trying to think what else. I did play against a control deck in the League Cup too. It was interesting because he was playing the Luxray Reverse Energy package. So what happened was he had a turn where he misplayed. He meant to get a Mist Energy on a Pidgey when he benched it, but he misplayed. He grabbed a Bravery Charm instead. And then I went Vacuum, Boss KO, Pidgeot, and Pidgey. So he had no Pidgey on a board whatsoever. He picked up his Lumineon. So then I Ionoed the Lumineon away. He had a Mimikyu in play, but I had Dracloak. And then he Luxray Reverse Energy'd my Dracloak. And then I KO'd his Luxray. And then I kept, using Silene Super Odd Loop to try to get the Dracloaks back into play, because I only played the 3-2 Dreepy, which kind of hurt me a little bit in that matchup. But then I realized something. If I keep going Dracloak and I keep trying to pressurize his Mimikyu, eventually he will go into Radiant Charizard range. So I was like, okay, I think I just win if I just keep using Dracloak, and eventually he'll just walk into Radiant Charizard and I'll win the game. So, it was only so many things he could do. He had a Defiance Fest, Mist Energy Mimikyu. But I had it up. I had the opportunity to put 1 damage count on the Mimikyu when I killed the Pidgeot. I went 5 on Pidgey, 1 on Mimikyu before the Mist Energy hit it. So then when he went Defiance Fest, I went Dracloak for 30 damage, so it had 30 HP left. And eventually when I got back to Dracloak, I just won the game. But even if he kept trying to kill my Dracloak, I eventually just could go down the route of being able to abuse the Radiant Charizard and knock out the Mimikyu anyways. So it was something I was looking to do if he ever tried to Luxray me. And he had no Pidgeot on board, so he was never able to late game Ursaluna Penny me or something like that, which is the only thing that that matchup is losable. If they set up a really good checkmate spot and they can Ursaluna Penny Loop you, you probably just lose that match. So that's something you do need to keep your eye on in the Pidgeot control matchup. I'm trying to think of anything else with the deck in the League Cup, because I took a few IDs. I beat a Gardevoir round 1. They just couldn't really do much when I set up Dragapult really fast. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the tournament report. I've been playing this deck a ton. Again, I've won 3 tournaments with it, which is kind of crazy. I think it's a very strong deck. I think this deck has potential to maybe be potentially BDIF, or at the very least, it can challenge Gardevoir for one of the best decks in the format, for sure. And then again, there's a few approaches you can take. You can play this Neo Upper Energy approach, or you can play the Tord version of the deck that plays Unfair Stamp, which, I think both builds are very justifiably good. I think the Silene Kiranturo is just kind of nutty, too, in the deck. I just love the deck a lot. I think it's really good. It's good for the meta. The meta can counter it. Again, if Enhanced Hammer and Temple Sinnoh pick up play, it gets a little bit more grief. If Snorlax Control starts playing Sandshrew again, things can get a little sketchy. So it's not a perfect deck that eventually I think it could fall off, but I think it's still fine, and I think the deck is really strong, and I definitely recommend trying it out if you haven't already. But I hope you enjoyed the video. In today's video on my League Cup League Challenge mini report and all that stuff, and kind of giving you guys a deck profile breakdown of the deck. I didn't really do a master class slideshow or anything like that, but hopefully my explanations of how matchups can go, matchups can play, board states you want to look towards, all that stuff hopefully helped you out in this video. And I will admit, you do need to get lucky with the deck too. Sometimes you got to get lucky and get that turn 2 pulled off. And if you can win games with it. The deck can take a bit of luck involved too. I did want to emphasize that also. But yeah, I think the deck is really strong. I think right now I'm leaning towards the build I played with the 2 of Charizard over the 3 Dragapult. I think both builds are fine. But right now, with the meta, I kind of like the double Charizard over the 1-1 Charizard, but, is what it is. If you want to lean into the heavier Dragapult, you can. You have more consistent Dragapult turn 2 if you lean into the Dragapult over the Charizard, but Charizard's just really good into a meta where like you're expecting more Raging Bolt. And the Double Zard does help more in a Guardy also. It just gives you more advantages against Gardevoir over having a 1/1 line, which can be countered with counter catchers and stuff like that, and Screamtail and Monkey Dory and stuff like that. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, and hopefully this deck profile explanation helped you out. Maybe in the future I'll do another one of these if I have more success with any other decks in the format. And I'll catch you on another video here on the second channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Help me with the road to reaching 16K subs, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye-bye.